Hello, everyone. Welcome to Off the Cuff, where the headlines come to life. We are with Vince Orlando. He's an actor, writer, producer, as well as a professional in finance and international business. Quite a history and quite a story. Vince, welcome to Off the Cuff. It's so wonderful to have you here. We have a celebrity with us. It's exciting.
In my head, I'm a celebrity.
Batman versus Superman thinks you're a celebrity too. So we're going to talk about that, whole entity in a little bit. But you have quite a history, and I think you're an inspiration to a lot of people, and especially young people. How old are you now?
41.
41.
Yeah.
Before we get into stuff, I want to ask you a question. What were you like in your 20s? What were you thinking?
I wasn't thinking. I was just out,
I was rhetorical question.
Yeah, I was letting societal norms guide me. At a young age, I remember being into physics and astronomy. And
so you were science oriented even at a young age.
Yeah. Well, I was a child. I wondered about the universe, and that's where my interests lied. In soul searching at a young age. And then I remember a career day. It was in my senior year. The teacher asked, or the counselor, what do you want to do? She said, I want to do something in physics or astronomy, maybe. And her intent was good, but she said, how are you going to make money doing that?
Physics or astronomy?
Yeah.
Physics. Okay.
But that's how are you going to make money? She's like, you're a good talker. Maybe you should think about, and she started spouting off about Wall Street and maybe be a broker, or you'd be a great attorney, but you're going to have to do this much school. And I came from a poor area where school for a lot of people wasn't an option. A university, especially the extended, 4 years after that for law school, just wasn't an option. So, I lived in a place where you were kind of confined to certain ideologies. And I took that to heart. I said,
a lot of challenges growing up?
A ton of challenges. And I really took it to heart. I said, okay, well, I need to go make money. To heck with all these dreams and aspirations, I need to go make money. So I majored in finance and international business. So that's how I lived. I lived money driven. I started chasing acting and all of that, but was chasing it for the wrong reasons. I chased it for money, fame, fortune, and that's what was there, and it turned out being wrong, but that's how I lived. My 20s were, if you look at the stereotype for a young guy in Hollywood, I was doing male modeling back then, and I was, 90210 and Buffy and movies with B movies with Corey Feldman, and you know what I mean, was my
Buffy the Vampire
Slayer, doing all these little pop culture. So I was living that life out in Hollywood.
It sounds pretty glamorous.
It was for a kid. I say kid now because I'm 41, but I was a kid out in Hollywood from a poor environment, found a way to make money at a young age, and did all the wrong things with it. But it's part of my story, so I don't judge it. It is what it is.
Experience.
But yeah, that's what I was in my 20s. I was I remember hanging out with Leonardo DiCaprio at I'm not going to say where, but
come
on. He had just done Titanic.
Where does Leonardo hang out at?
Well, we were on Sunset at a not so appropriate bar, and
got it.
But anyway, and he had just done Titanic, and that was the life. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That was all that I saw.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
It was fun. I'm not going to say that it wasn't. It's not who I am today, but it was a great experience. And everything kind of led to where I am today.
Well, you also did finance and international business.
Yeah.
So was that after you had all those experiences in Hollywood? You came back and figured, okay, I've got to.
I hate finance. I hate the whole business world. Hate's a strong word. I dislike it. I disagree with the way that it's done. There's a way to do it with integrity, and then there's the way that Wall Street was doing it. But in college, I took my first class. It was macroeconomics.
Well, we knew that in 2008.
I knew it before. I went to. It was 1994 when I took my first macroeconomics class, and I remember challenging my professor. I said, "Who's predicting these numbers?" He said, he started spouting off the people that were responsible for predicting inflation or setting. Basically, they were puppet masters, and that's how I viewed it as a freshman in college. And
so you had a vision.
well, I knew that something was off. I'm like, who's responsible for this? This is, and I started questioning. They didn't like that, and finally, I remember saying in class, this is all bullshit. Excuse my language. You can believe it, but but that's you know, that's what I said, and you know, I wound up veering away from finance. I understood it. I know how the numbers work. I knew sales. I knew all of that just innately. I don't know how, but I wound up really taking focus in philosophy, sociology, psychology.
Have you ever watched The Big Short?
I just saw it the other night. Amazing film. I think everybody should see it.
I think so too.
Everybody should see it. But I saw this back in '94, and then you know, I remember being out in Hollywood, and I was about to buy a condo, and they're ridiculously expensive out there.
Absolutely.
It was a Toluca Lake. It's not even in the hills. It was a penthouse apartment, townhouse they called it. Penthouse only because it was on the second floor and had cathedral ceilings. $319,500 back in, it was early 2000s. And I was like, okay, well, that's just what it goes for out here. And I remember this guy was supposedly a friend, my realtor, and I didn't have any provable income. I made money, but, you know, I didn't have anything, you know, no consistent job. I was an actor, you know what I mean? So, but he's like, no, just give me $9,000 and, you know, we'll get the process going. They were just giving loans away, $319,500 to a 20-something.
Absolutely.
And I was like, okay, well, and his whole pitch was, look, property values always go up in California. You'll be able to sell this for almost double in five years. And so I said, well, what if it doesn't go up? And because it was an interest-only loan. All I was paying was interest.
Goodness. So you weren't paying anything off the principal?
Nothing on the principal. And I'm like, well, what if it doesn't go up? Well, it will. And that's all he could. So this went back and forth, and finally I said, no, I'm not. And I didn't do it.
Good for you. That would have been
well, it's what everybody was doing. You know, you get enamored by these things. Because for me, as a young guy, it would have been nice to have this place right by the studio, you know, Warner, right down the street from Warner Brothers. But I'm like, you know what, there's something else.
You understood the finances more than any other person that would have been in your situation.
Well, and I'm from the streets, so there's street finance too, and I know when somebody's trying to pull one over on me, you know what I mean? So those instincts kicked in. You know, I was always kind of looking at people's angles, and he had one, even though he called himself a friend. He had an angle. He knew that this loan was bad. So when I watched it, it just brought all of that back, that, you know, at a very young age, all you had to do was read a little bit. You know what I mean? A lot of people aren't in finance. They don't have that background. They don't think that way. So they were taking this person's word for it and running with it. And why shouldn't they? They wanted it. You know what I mean? The American dream. You own, you know.
And that was pretty catastrophic what happened.
It was horrible.
And unfortunately, so many people benefited, and the majority just ended up on the streets, basically losing homes.
Sad thing is they're still benefiting.
And they're still, I know, and we haven't corrected it. So that's a whole... Wow, that's a whole nother conversation, but that was an amazing movie. And you as a finance person, I mean, you get it, and you understand. And what I love about you too is you have sort of both sides of the brain working here. We talked a little bit about that because you have the creative side, and yet you have the logistics, mechanical side. So I think those two things, cooperating together are really ingredients for success. So, you were in Hollywood and you were living the good life and hanging out with Leo and on Sunset.
It was only once, but yeah.
So what was your aha moment? What made you go from that lifestyle to, I mean, you're still in the industry, but what was your chronological order? And I want young people to really, listen and sort of figure out that they're, you sort of have to go through a process to figure out what you want.
For me, the aha moment was really the birth of my son. That was the aha moment. That's the moment where everything changed for me. Prior to that, though, I always believed in standing my ground. I met Matt Damon and Ben Affleck at the Oscars. They had won that night for Good Will Hunting, and I was talking to him. I was chopping it up, and I was right by the bathrooms at the governor's ball. It was the governor's ball, and the director and the producer of the governor's ball comes walking in. Well, they were talking to me. Every other word was F this, F that, and Ben was on the phone. Yeah, we're going to the Vanity Fair party, and they're kids. You know what I mean? and the producer and director walk in, and they just snapped right out of it. Oh, sir, that was a great show that you put it. You know, and it just complete.
Total different
And
personalities
it gave me some, and these guys had stood their ground. Ben was sleeping on Kevin Smith's couch, the director Kevin Smith, and Matt was bunking up with a friend too in Hollywood, and shopping Goodwill Hunting around Hollywood, and everybody was trying to buy him out of the script. They said, you don't come with it, we're not putting money into unknowns. And years later, I got that same thing, but they stood their ground. You know what I mean? They stood their ground, Robin Williams attached, and the rest is history. So I took that story to heart, because I got sick of sitting in, you know, a room with 500 other guys that looked like me for 90210, trying to get a 5 and under. A 5 and under is where you have 5 lines and under, it's a day player. And you might not work again for 6 months, a year, 2 years. You know what I mean? It really disturbed me. The assembly, the dream was kind of dying because the industry was an assembly line.
Very unstable kind of focus or
unstable, but really I was an artist. You know what I mean? Like that, I was attracted to that part of the business, and there was no art. And when you're reading across from an exec at NBC who's just throwing lines at you, and they're deciding your future, you're like, they don't know anything about what I actually do, and they don't care. You know what I mean? Right. So it was really disturbing, and I took their story to heart, and I wrote a script called Somewhere Better Than Here. And a friend of mine hip-pocketed me. Hip-pocketing is when you take a client on for just one, for one deal to see how it goes, and then if it goes well, they sign you on. Well, my friend took me on for Somewhere Better Than Here and pitched it around town, and we got up to about, and I'm not going to say the studio because they wouldn't like it, but $475,000 they were going to give me on the script as a first-time screenwriter, and but that's without me attached as the actor, and I'm an actor. That's really what I went out there for. I said, well, no, I tried pulling the Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, Sylvester Stallone. I come with it. We're not putting money into an unknown. I was like, all right, well, I'll go make myself known, and I killed the deal. And I wrote Life Goes On. That's where Life Goes On came from. I wrote something that I knew I could get produced. I read a book on producing. And I had the finance background, so I wrote a business plan accordingly and went and raised $250,000 for Life Goes On. So I could put myself eventually in my own movie Somewhere Better Than Here. But in terms of the industry, the aha moment was talking with those two and seeing their success. And it just kind of inspired me to hold my ground. But it was definitely the road.
Was it a good decision?
Yeah. I can look at it. There's been times in my life where there's no shortage of struggles when you're an artist, especially when you're more of an artist than the finance guy, so you're going to struggle because at the end of the day, they want it to be about money.
Right.
Numbers, numbers, numbers. They don't really care about
creativity
or what the story says. It's what sells, so there were times where I just wouldn't be working, and prior to my son, and then even after my son being born, where I'm just struggling. I'm struggling hard financially because I stood my ground. And I'm thinking, man, that $500,000 would have been nice, but spiritually, which I've learned throughout this entire process, is the absolute most important thing in terms of growth, because I could have taken that $500,000 and still been the shell I was in my 20s. I was having fun, but I was kind of a shell, you know what I mean? I was a puppet. I was adhering to societal norms for who I was or who I thought I was, and that's where I would have probably stayed. If I would have had success early on, I didn't really have a father figure. So I was kind of letting my environment shape who I was, and because I was good at talking and had some charisma and I could lead people, I could take in information that was being thrown at me and use that to create the illusion that I was leading people, but really all I was doing was taking in society's, this is how you're supposed to be, and then being not forceful, but charismatic with the ideas. And people would kind of be like, all I was doing was reiterating popular opinion.
Conforming
to the process. Conforming with the illusion of leading, and I probably would have stayed in that bubble. Maybe I would have broke out at some point, but I believe that everything happens for a reason, and my integrity, unbeknownst to me, remained intact, so.
Oh, that was your instinct to do the right thing.
A lot of people don't follow it,
No.
and in retrospect, I can say that I did the right thing, If you'd asked me that 5 years ago, I might have said, maybe I should have taken. You go back and forth. That's life. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But absolutely, that was the right decision.
So you actually produced some movies, and they're out. Tell us how we would watch those. What the storyline was. Somewhere Better Than Here.
Somewhere Better Than Here is not out. That's the one that prompted Life Goes On in cut print, out in Michigan. Somewhere Better Than Here, that one I wrote. It's in development right now. It's being shopped around for financing through some foreign investors. I don't know when that's going to happen, but it's in development. So we've had some pretty hefty stars show interest, but it's all about finance, so I can't throw their names out there right now. But Somewhere Better Than Here was the conduit to everything else. They didn't want me as the actor because I wasn't a known name. I said, I'll go make myself known. I raised $250,000 for Life Goes On. Life Goes On was probably as personal as I'll ever be allowed to be, when there's money involved. I was able to be brutally honest. It's about addiction, really about foolish pride. That's, and we all have it.
We all have it.
And
sometimes it takes
it can
us,
kill you. You know what I mean? And that's
to a place we don't want to be.
Yeah, and that's what the whole undercurrent of the story is. On the surface, it's about a guy who's a drug dealer, but also addicted to his own product, and his relationship is falling apart, and he can't admit that he's an addict. A friend of mine overdosed when I was writing the script, and kind of took it to a really visceral and real place. So they show that movie a lot. It's out there. It's just it's more of a European feel in terms of the way it ends, and it's a really brutally honest movie, and probably the one that I still get the most personal response from. Where can I get it? You know what I mean? People are always still, and we made this over 10 years ago.
Really? But Sundance? Anything like that?
You know what? We won the production award at the Pomelo International Film Festival in Mumbai, and I did some smaller festivals, and it got accepted to Toronto. But Toronto Film Festival, but I couldn't raise the money to finish the film for theater. And it was like $30,000, and I couldn't convince just my investors who really don't know the business. They just think dollars and cents. I couldn't convince them to sink the money in time to. I went up to Toronto, met with the people on the board, and yes, it'll be. I couldn't finish it. Long story short, I couldn't finish it because of the money. So we would have shown at Toronto, but.
Well, there's definitely still time. I think the most successful projects are the ones that are really thought out. And the ones that are have taken the time to really be produced and to be top notch. But your titles really catch me. Somewhere Better Than Here, Life Goes On, and I know that you've through your history and through your lifespan and through your experiences, you've become very spiritual as well. And I know you started somewhere in your life, only because it's what society tells us, and again the conforming process. But you've sort of evolved spiritually, and I think that is something that that intrigues me and I love about you. Talk to us about that. I know that you go to the Unity Renaissance Church. Come heck or high water, because it was snowing that day, and I know that you made it out there. Tell us about that journey.
We are spiritual beings having a human experience, not the other way around. People confuse it. They take reality, our physical reality, as reality, and it's not. It's just a part of it. Our time here on this planet is for learning, elevating our frequency as spiritual beings. So it's always there. I kind of devolved, you know what I mean? I went back to the source, which I always knew was there, but I denied it. And that's part of the process of growth. A soul can't taste chocolate or love or hate or feel pain. You know what I mean? So in this on the physical plane, you're here to learn those things, and elevate your frequency. And I speak like this now. I would have looked at myself like a weirdo when I was in my 20s, being like, what are you talking? You know what I mean? But yeah, so I just got back to the source is all I did. I remembered who I was. And a lot of that was through my children, watching my children. We'd be out for a walk, and I'd watch my son stop and just be fascinated by the ants on this ant pile. I still remember it like it's happening right now. And that was one of those moments where because my head was clear and and I was allowing myself to really be in the moment. I wasn't thinking about what the future held, or you know what I mean. And that's what people mean by being in the moment. Like right now is all that matters. Future is stuff that hasn't happened yet. And, you know, we project so much into the future, we dwell on our past. But at that point, I was in the moment, and kind of took me back to that childhood curiosity that was stripped from me. But that you know, you can't make money wondering why you're here, or you can't make money doing that. Those are stupid questions. Quit dreaming. You know what I mean? Let's focus on an agenda, a physical human agenda, and this whole process led me back to that. You know, Renaissance Unity in Warren. You know, I had been sharing spiritual ideas.
And it's non-denominational.
Non-denominational. It's not even a church, really. They call it a church because that's the establishment that it is, but it's a all-inclusive spiritual community. So you'll have, you know, Muslim, Christian, people that are kind of fed up with religion, organized religion, but know that connection. They have a real connection to a higher power. Whatever you want to call it is irrelevant. But there's a connection, and you know, it goes back to Buddhist principles and stuff that before organized religion tainted this
Spiritual
purity
aspect.
Yeah. So I stumbled onto that place, and I didn't go because it was called a church. And then I saw that Deepak Chopra was speaking there, and I'm like, all right, well, this isn't a church, not any church that I've been brought up with,
Right.
because it was quantum physics that led me back to spiritual. The birth of my son in quantum physics, this deep understanding of us being all one, from even a scientific perspective, is what really opened the doors for me. Because my logical brain attached to that idea, you know, quantum physics says that for any subatomic particle to become a particle rather than a wave, there has to be consciousness. So for this table to even have a determined state, there has to be some form of consciousness to make it so. That made absolute sense. This has been proven, you know, time and time again. And that made sense to me. I'm like, okay, so where's the outside perspective? Where's the outside consciousness? And then the birth of my son, I was feeling emotions that were foreign to me, this unconditional love. And it was the only truth that I ever really knew, you know, feeling this feeling. And just those two things happening at the same time led me down that path. And then, you know, I never had any brick and mortar to go to with groups of people who, you know, it was the people that I talked to outside of those walls. You know, there are the select few who share the same type of spiritual ideas, and the internet has made it possible for people with these ideas to kind of corroborate. But it was cool to stumble onto that place, and you know, and be able to expose my children to a place of brick and mortar that didn't teach guilt, that didn't teach you're born less than, that this is what it is. There's this man in the clouds who judges you, condemns what you do. You need to bow and worship. What they taught was empowerment, which is really, you know what I mean? Love is empowerment. So that was kind of the
message.
The message, and I was already living that, and it was just a place. It was a natural place for me to go to. So yeah, I do go there.
So basically, to have this spiritual sense and this spiritual experience, but without being committed to one set of logistics or one set of ideals in terms of religion, but it is still to exercise that, and we still have to call it religious spirituality, with the connectivity to a spiritual being. So basically, and I love what you said, I mean, everybody of any religion can go there and feel as if, you know, they're in their own place of worship.
Because we are right here in this place where we sit right now. We're all connected to the same source. It doesn't matter what you call it. And even physics will tell you, if you believe in the Big Bang and that's all you believe in, well, I mean, there's a singularity. And if everything came from that single point, even from a scientific perspective, we were all one. And there's something called quantum entanglement. Once particles interact with each other, they're connected forever. And they've tested this in labs where, you know, you separate an atom, and you know, or a proton. You separate a proton, and the proton that's 7 miles down the road at another lab, you stimulate this one, that one reacts. There's no stimuli on that end. It's just connected.
So connectivity.
So quantum physics has proven that, you know, anything that's been connected is always connected. It doesn't end. And that was fascinating to me. That kind of just, that's all I needed, to open myself up to the idea that, yes, we are all one. And, you can read book after book that proves this fact. You don't have to believe in a God in the skies, or, you know what I mean, or this, you don't have to believe in that. You just have to know that we're all one. And when you do bad, you do bad to yourself and everything around, it's
conscience and intent.
Conscience and intent,
Absolutely. You also have something coming up called Memoirs of an American Wannabe.
Yeah.
I love your titles. I mean, they're so telling. So what was your inspiration for doing this, and where are we with
everything
this particular,
we just talked about?
Right.
Yeah, everything. My titles, by the way, the way I write, I'll scrap it if at the end the title, it's like a long poem for me. So if the title can't say everything about what I've just written, then to me it's no good. So I have pages and pages of stuff just that I won't touch because I couldn't tie it together at the end. So Memoirs of an American Wannabe, that's what I was. That's what we all are in America. American wannabes, you know what I mean? And we're born.
We all want the American dream, which is really equated
which has been
with
fed
money,
to us.
basically.
Yeah, it's been fed to us. It's not really what we want.
Right.
Kind of like, when I was pulled away from physics and the things that really I was interested in, and said, go be a stockbroker. And I majored in finance and international business. Wound back up in the right place anyway, but took an extra 20 years, So Memoirs of an American Wannabe is just, it's about that journey, about going after things that you think you want and repeatedly winding up empty, even after you've acquired them, or feeling empty when you don't. And really, that's not what
and always wanting more.
Always wanting more, because really you're not fulfilling what your purpose is. And that was my journey. I would acquire these things, and it wasn't enough. It just wasn't, because it wasn't who I was, So it's about a guy, loosely based on my journey, who acquires certain things and winds up empty, and then reacts accordingly, and then ultimately comes to, the bottom. I guess the bottom line is that we have access to everything we want and need. Only our wants are driven by society. And when your wants are driven by society, you're never going to truly have what you desire, because you don't even know what that is. So Memoirs of an American Wannabe is about that journey and the discovery that I've always had access to everything that's important. I just didn't know
realize it. When do we get to see this?
That I'm
in the process of?
Yeah, it may. There's so much now that it may wind up a book first. So, I'll be done with the screenplay by next month. But there's so much that I want to say. It's probably more than likely going to wind up a book first.
Okay, well, that sounds good. We'll look for that. And Batman versus Superman, you have a role in that.
Yeah. That's that's nice for the pay. I don't even know what happens to me. I have no idea what I'm shooting at in that movie. It was so secretive.
It's all secretive.
Yeah, I had to sign non-disclosure agreements, and I was told that I was playing one role, Detective Gallagher, and I wasn't. I went in and read for that, and had to feel up the casting director, because that was part of the thing, and I got the role. I showed up for wardrobe fitting, and they were dressing me in fatigues. I'm like, well, I thought it was a detective. No, you're Apache Commander Burrell. And I only got that because I saw the name on my shirt, the tag on my shirt. I'm like, okay, well. So anyway, Zack Snyder comes out, and he has, it was Zack Snyder's AD, and he comes out, and he has a pink envelope, and that's where all my lines are written. Usually, as an actor, you get what's called sides, and sides are just the script for the day. I didn't get that. I got an envelope with my lines written front and back, and I was the only one on that day that had lines. Everybody else was CGI, except for my gunner. So I'm in the body of an Apache helicopter with green screen surrounding me, and I'm giving the orders to take down, and he takes me over to the, I don't even know what I take down, who the bad guy is, but he takes me over to a screen that has King Kong on top of a building. I'm like, I'm not shooting at King. He's like, that's your eye line. I'm like, I'm not shooting at King Kong. Can you tell me who I'm shooting at? And he said, nope. He's like, learn your lines. Go back to your trailer, man. We'll call you when we're ready. So
I love it. I love it. So we get to see you in Batman versus Superman. A lot of secrets going on, but we'll figure it out.
I
when we
may
go see
die.
the
I may
movie.
live.
Uh-oh.
I have no idea what happens. But
You really, really quick. We have to wrap it up. How many kids do you have?
2.
2, and their names?
Well, Vinny. I wasn't
Vinny.
real creative there. Yeah, Vince Orlando V is my son, and my daughter Sophia.
Well, hello to Vince and Sophia. Your dad's inspirational. Thank you all for being with us. And Vince Orlando, thank you for being on Off the Cuff today.
Thank you for having me.